Once upon a time, in a faraway land,
What are fairy stories?
The strange and wondrous place where nothing is as it seems.
Magic mirror on the wall. Who is the fairest?
Fairy is a perilous land.
Before she found herself falling down what seemed to be a very deep
It
well.
is the place you visit
A world
in your
of
dreams.
myth and magic.
when the clock began to
The
chime
evening
midnight,
star sailed down through the
A
sky.
mysterious voice began calling to the sad
She
princess.
pricked her finger with her needle. 3 drops of blood fell on the
In a
snow
trance,
white
she
pillow.
followed the haunting
And peered
sound
into the
of the
hollow
winding
tree.
stairway to the top of the
You
tower.
can read along with me in your book.
she waved her wand and said the magic words.
Let's begin now.
Well met, witches. We've gathered here to discuss a piece of sacred lore. Annabelle from AB's Witches Journal suggested The Nightingale by Hans Christian Andersen. Can I call you AB?
Please, AV is easier,
Okay.
so AV works.
AB, why don't you tell us a little bit about your practice, about yourself, and what brought you, what inspired you to suggest this tale?
Yes, so my name is Aníbal Rodriguez, but I always invite everyone to call me AV. I'm originally from Venezuela, so as you can notice, I have a accent because Spanish is my first language. When I came to my practice, I feel that I was called to my practice since I was a kid, but it took me a while, to free myself from certain chains of religion and all of that. I see you, Laura. And 5 years ago to now, when I arrived to USA, I started to practice. I don't have a particular name for my practice yet. I feel that it's closer to brujeria, maybe. But I don't feel that it's fair to call it brujeria because I haven't been trained by. I do remember certain things that my family did, but just that. And what I do pretty much, I just started creating content in social media, sharing some books reviews, and just with the goal or intention of share my growth because I do feel that in one way or another, I'm just starting my path, just 5 years. So I feel that that's pretty much it. Very eclectic. I am trying to read here and there, but I do find a lot of comfort and I find myself at home when it comes to talk about brujeria, especially when it comes to talk about practicing with San Cipriano, who is very, very known in South America.
And what inspired you to bring this tale, The Nightingale, to us?
So the truth is that I love different tales. I do remember that I was talking with you once in regards a tarot deck that I have, which each card has exactly that one. Each card has a different story. It has a different character from a different story. And the first thing that I said was that my favorite card of that entire deck was the Nightingale, which is the 4 of Cups, if I am not wrong. So yeah, that's where everything came from. Yes.
Thanks. Before we move on, Laura, what can you tell us about your spiritual practice and any events you might have coming up in August or September?
First of all, hello everybody, and thank you for having me back here. About my practice, I am Mexican from Mexico, so I have a lot of like AB, a recovering Catholic. I grew up Catholic in Mexico, which is not quite as Catholic as one might think. A lot of witchcraft, but my practice right now, I'm a priestess of the goddess, and I am a circus century minister. I am eclectic, I guess, on paganism, goddess tradition with a little bit of Wicca, kind of like a sparkled on top. And I combine my very personal practice with indigenous knowledge and indigenous practice. I'm part of a Calpulli here in Chicago. And the Calpulli is a Native Studies group, I guess. That's how you will define it. And I love the goddess tradition. And about events, I do have a lot of events on August, actually. But the most important one, the one that I want to talk about, if people are still trying to get in, please, I think you can still buy tickets to Parliament of the World's Religions. I will be very honored to be at the Parliament of the World Religions. I'm going to be part of 3 different panels. There's going to be a panel on podcasting. There's going to be a panel on Pagan Voices of Chicago. And there's going to be a panel on Festivals of the Dead, where we're going to be talking about Day of the Dead, Halloween, and All Saints Day. So that is that. And then there's some other activities within Parliament of the World Religions that I'm going to be part of. And of course, if you're in Chicago, you all know I'm a witch for hire. And you can hire me for tarot readings and other services. I will be all over Chicago in August doing events. So thank you for that. And of course, the online classes and all that.
Thank you,
So
Laura.
that's it. Thank you so much for having me back again.
Oh, always. You're always welcome. And Dave, same question. What do you practice, and where might people find you late August, early September?
I am Dave Gaddy, the Weathered Wiseman on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, but I don't use it much. I'm learning. My practice is pretty much eclectic too, with a leaning toward traditional witchcraft, Appalachian folk magic, things like that. I work with Carnunas primarily, but he's not the only one that I work with. I also work with the Morrigan and a lot of Celtic gods and goddesses, just because of my Scottish ancestry. I do a lot of work with ancestor magic. Just finished teaching a course at Mystic South here in Atlanta on meeting your ancestors where you are, and I will be doing some follow-up work in the spring at 3 different conferences. I don't have the names right off the top of my head, where I'll do that course and also a course on using ancestral magic to guide yourself through trauma. So that's one piece of it. And I do have a book coming out in 2024 called The Simple Magic of Wild Things. And that is through Rebel Story Press and Sven Davison. So a lot of exciting things happening. August is, we'll go ahead and get this out of the way. I'm a Llamas baby, so August 1st is my birthday. So it'll be my 57th. But as far as August, it's mostly a lot of family birthdays. September, I'll be introducing some online courses, same thing in October. And that's pretty much it.
Great. Thank you. I'm really looking forward to those courses. Well, we're here today to discuss The Nightingale. The Nightingale was written by Hans Christian Andersen, the Danish fairy tale author, and was published in 1843. So generally around the same time period as the other fairy tales that we've covered, and even generally around the same time as William Blake. It was a literary tale, so unlike the Brothers Grimm, he was not publishing these under the pretense of cataloging folk traditions, but he was more of a fantasy author. Initial reactions. What stood out to everybody the most about this story?
I think that one of the big elements that this story, I feel that it shone a lot, was the way that nature, creation, and practically the essence of a being was the main character above humans' creation. And allow me to rephrase that in the way of, we can see how the spirit of a nightingale, how nature had its own way to create beauty, whether as this king, this emperor, he loved to organize everything in a way that was aesthetically pleasing for him, and still this aesthetic was not able to emulate nature's beauty. So there was a big contrast between nature and human creation, or yeah, humans creation, let's say it like that. I think that that was one of the things that shown the most for me.
I think it's funny that um, there's so much talk right now about artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence is taking place in space of art and artists and creation. And then we get this tale that is as old as you said, over 100 years old or even more. And it's tapping into that, that is the artificial intelligence of the time. And I don't know, pardon my ignorance, but I don't know if at the time that the tale was written, they actually have the technology to create a machine that would do what the artificial Nightingale was doing. But how ahead of their time, and with all of the artificial intelligence right now, and how we see, at least on illustrations, that is faulty, that you can feed the machine all these key words and prompts, and the images are coming up with like 3 hands and 3 eyes or whatever, and how artificial intelligence cannot imitate real art, which is basically the premise of the tale. So that jumped out for me. And also the eternal feminists, of course. The female figures, in one of the versions that I watched, the bird is actually female. So it serves the emperor, just like the kitchen maiden serves the emperor. So again, we see women coming to the rescue, but being a wallflower, which is like, what the heck, But again, this was written over 100 years ago, so what can we expect? It's almost like if it was written yesterday.
A lot of the same thing stood out for me, especially the connection between nature and the creation of man, and how you've got nature, which essentially flourished in the end, but the creation of man was fallible and essentially fell apart. And we watch as this emperor is essentially put to his deathbed because, and I want to take it to the point of saying, because of the depression of not being able to hear the music. And it took the true artistry of what the bird had inside to bring him back.
Awesome. I love we're all jumping on some important concepts and words here. I like how an ongoing thing that seems to keep happening with our discussions is they unexpectedly seem to build on the discussion that we had in our previous episode, and that's happened with a lot of our discussions. And so in this one, this was written after the popularity of Newtonian physics, like Isaac Newton, who I don't want to badmouth because he was a magician. But Newtonian physics influenced the Catholic Church and influenced religion and the popular understanding of the cosmos as almost a giant mechanical machine, with everything being designed in perfect circles and the universe working almost like the cogs of a watch or a clock. And that was because God was perfect and designed the universe as like a machine. And we see both in William Blake and now in this story, the commentary on having a worldview that can be easily shattered, where everything is predictable and fits together perfectly, as opposed to something that is truly unpredictable, as nature really is. In fairy tales, birds often represent an aspect of spirit, whether that be the spirit of a dead person or a spirit from celestial beings or messengers. And the story does seem to be making comments about the place of art and artists, but I don't actually know what it is, because the mechanical bird is described as a beautiful work of art as well.
I think that in one way or another, it does showcase the elements of art and art creation. But I do feel that when as the story keeps going, you can notice that what predetermines the art itself is the motive behind it. And the emperor loved art and loved the aesthetic, and for the emperor, it was needed to have everything in the right place for his own pleasure, as a way to showcase power and dominion and control. Anything has anything can come out of his power. Anything cannot not be controlled by him. Like this sense of chaos was not understood, and it was not needed. I don't want chaos. I want everything to be under my control. Even there is a moment where he says at the very beginning, how come that everyone knows about this nightingale except me? And the funny thing about this story is that, as I said, it does showcase the importance of art. And at any point, the mechanical birth was menospreciated. Like it was not hated, but everyone was able to notice, especially the fishermen, especially those that have a deeper connection with nature. Oh, that's nice, but it's not as the real nightingale. And why did I mention that? Maybe it's the reason behind the art, the one that showcases if the art value or not, because the fisherman was connected with nature. The fisherman loved the nightingale. The nightingale was a free soul. At any point, the nightingale enjoyed being bound and allowed to have two walks during the day and one at night. And as soon as the opportunity came in for them to fly free, the nightingale took it. But again, I feel that I'm spreading too thin. You can notice that the mechanical bird, yes, it was beautiful. Yes, it was with intention to imitate the nightingale, but was not able to achieve the real beauty of the essence of a nightingale, who was able to sing whatever they wanted, however they feel, to the point that was able to push death away. I don't know. It's such an interesting concept. I have more to say about that, but I also, I rather, I'm going to keep myself quiet. I want to hear Laura and Dave as well.
Along that same line, one of the things that stood out for me was the fact that, like you said, the nightingale, every time she came in contact with the emperor wanted to control. It was either a cage, it was, I'll give you your room in the castle. There was an element of control there. And also, like you said, the nightingale had limitless songs. The mechanical bird had one song. And that's all that could happen. And everybody was so wound up about learning that one song that they forgot about everything that the nightingale could do.
So talking about the art and the singing on this tale, it reminded me of a course I'm taking right now. I was saying with the amazing Christopher Hughes about Caribbean and going into a cauldron and learning about life and creativity and art and how the culture of Caribbean has been kept alive by thousands and thousands of years by the bards, because they keep singing praises to Caribbean. So it's about singing and this metaphor of the precious singing and how every single one of us has a song, and our song is unique to ourselves, which is exactly what this tale is about. And then coincidentally, which I'm not surprised, I'm just saying coincidentally for the sake of saying it, the Native Americans, specifically Mesoamericans, the Mexicas, the praising of life and life essences, or the teteos, They call it floricanto, which is flower and singing. And the singing is the joy, the story, the thread that keeps us together. And every time that something important happens, you sing. You go back to art. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to take you back 3 years ago to the pandemic. And you have heard me say, especially you, Aaron, a million times, how much I already loved art. But after the pandemic, I am enamored of art more than anything else on the planet because it kept us sane. It kept us alive. It kept, like in the tale, death away from some of us because a lot of us were dying emotionally. Unfortunately, a lot of people die physically. But for us who were dying emotionally, it was art that kept us sane and going. Every single one of us turned to art, whether videos, social media, creation on social media, painting, drawing, singing, dancing, whatever. So I think art is really what nurtures the soul. And I'm sure I'm not the first person saying this. So it's a great metaphor that the song of the Nightingale is so unique because we see it in different cultures. And also that in a time of hardship, when the emperor was coming close to dying, is art that keeps him alive. Also, a great side note that almost I haven't heard anybody talk about, how the kingdom was already, he was already left for dead. And they were already like moving on and capitalizing and all of that. And I'm like, that's nothing new. You know, in this society, a body is not even called yet when we're trying to see about the inheritance. But, you know, that in and of itself in the tale is part of the art and is wonderfully weaved into the story.
And the kingdom, it says at the beginning of the story that the emperor's palace was made out of porcelain. I love that because it's man-made and it's so fragile. Some of these stories I talk about how you could view them as embodying a person. So the characters are all aspects of oneself. And I see that palace being like the fragile worldview or belief that could be so easily shattered if exposed to other ideas or concepts that lie outside of that worldview. It makes a point to talk about, as Annabelle mentioned, that the garden was laid according to a plan. And that phrase comes back later when it talks about how the artificial nightingale is better because its song is made according to a plan, and you'll know what to expect. And no one at the court, not only the emperor, but no one at the court has heard the nightingale. They've likely never left this artificial construct. And then the garden goes off into the deep forest, which leads into a great sea. And the nightingale is right at the intersection of the forest and the sea, like our anima.
Yeah, the first time actually that I had the opportunity to read the story without a preconceived notion or of who the writer was, and maybe the concept of maybe let's say about who the writer was. It was very interesting because the first thing that I see is this emperor is getting to meet a spirit. We are talking about a spirit of the forest. He fell in love with this spirit and he tried to subjugate this spirit, taking it out of its environment and space just to accommodate it as a trophy of sorts within his castle. And at the end, after death, after dealing with death and meeting death, also gave me a sort of initiation ideal. The emperor stop being that person that was focused on capturing as trophies. And I will say that maybe I saw a sort of archetype of a wizard or a witch, because this spirit was now free as it was meant to be, but at the same time was, okay, now I'm going to tell you the secrets of the kingdom. I'm going to tell you what people is talking about, and I'm going to heal you when you are sick, but you are not going to contain me anymore. I don't know, it gave me like that sort of archetype of, okay, maybe we saw a transformation in this emperor, whether as becoming a wizard or simply becoming friend of this spirit of the forest. He was not the same person that he was at the very beginning. And ironically, the story ends by the king say, "Hey, how is it? Good morning,
Good
everybody.
morning.
How is every hi? How is everyone doing?" Practically a new chapter on the story. We never know what happens with the kingdom. We never know what are the results of this death in the future within this place. But yeah, it was very funny. It was very cool. I definitely see like a type of dying and rebirth type of situation with this king. Yeah.
One of the things that struck me with this too was the fact that the Nightingale was the only one that truly saw the emperor's heart. The Nightingale, when the emperor offered payment, the Nightingale's like, "No, I've seen your heart. I've seen the tears. The tears are the payment." And the fact that when death was sitting on the emperor's chest, all the emperor could do was see it. It was the Nightingale that actually spoke to death, addressed death, and helped death away. So it's that healing from the spirit of nature. And I'm big on this, so big on this. I have to have my nature time. Got to spend time. And to know that spirit of nature has such healing properties anyway, but to see it represented so strongly here, even to the point of healing someone at the brink of death. So that was a huge piece.
A poignant line for me also was that the fisherman could appreciate the Nightingale, but he had things to do, and so he would forget it during the day, and then he would hear it again and remember how beautiful it is. Does that echo some of us in our practices, who okay, I won't even continue that. Yeah.
So I want to get to that point. Remind me of the bird that sings out of this window. But there is something that Avi and Dave said about the healing nature, right, of the bird. And there is a quote from the great compiler Ojo, because he compiled this knowledge, it wasn't his, that says, if you love a flower, don't cut it. Let it be the flower that it is, or else what you love does not exist anymore. And this tale of the Nightingale is exactly that, right? The emperor loved so much the song. First, he didn't know it because he lived hermetically on his little golden cage or porcelain. And then when he gets to know it, loves it so much that wants to consume it. Sounds a lot like romantic love. Wants to consume it and keep it and cut it, right? And keep it for himself. And that's why I say that romantic love kills, because when it's misunderstood, it does that. It consumes you. And then there is this transformation that Dave is talking about. Basically, he dies. He didn't die, but he dies. He dies. And even though, for whatever reason, the Nightingale brings him back, but it's not the same emperor. It's different. So there is a death. There is a transformation. Don't true love when you let the thing that you love go and be what it is. So it is a beautiful, beautiful testament to transformation, to the magic of the divine. I see the divine feminine, obviously, on the bird. But also when you were talking about the fisherman is so busy that he forgets about the bird, and that happens to, I think, all of us. Being a city pagan, Dave, I see you when you say you need your time on nature. I am incredibly bug phobic, so it's good for me to be a city pagan. And one of the things that connects me with nature, the few things that I love to connect with nature, are birds. I am in awe, and I will never not be, living in a city such as Chicago and hearing all these birds like in queue on spring at 3 o'clock in the morning, right here in my window. And right when I'm about to go to sleep, they start singing, and it's so loud that they keep me awake. And I will always be in awe of the birds. They have wings. They can go anywhere. They can be wherever they want. And they still choose to be in a city such as Chicago. And if that's not magic, then I don't know what is. But I think it's beautiful. And thank you for choosing this, AB, because I went on a YouTube rabbit hole listening to all the birds and their songs. And of course, the Nightingale is the best, considered the most beautiful song. So, but I learned so many now that after the tale, so thank you.
Laura, one of the things that you touched on was the love aspect of it. And I thought that it was amazing to me that the one that was the most intimate with this Nightingale was the common person, kitchen girl. Yes, the fisherman was busy, but when she was asked about the Nightingale, she's like, oh, yes, I know it well. So there was an intimacy there with someone who, she was busy. She was working in the kitchen. She was going nonstop, but she took the time to know and get to know this night and the song. She knew the song intimately.
And she's the first to actually address the Nightingale.
Mm-hmm.
When the emperor receives the artificial bird, everybody comes to treasure it more than the real bird. However, it comes with a message that says the emperor of Japan's Nightingale is pales in comparison, or something like that, is nothing compared to the emperor of China's Nightingale, aka the artificial bird is nothing compared to the natural one. And even though it's delivered with that message, they still decide to raise up the golden bird over the natural one. We were talking about art. This is where the role of art and artist, I think, becomes a bit blurrier for me. But at the end, the bird says, it's done its job. The artificial bird did its job and did it well. So I think that not that the artifice, not that there's anything wrong with the artifice, but it doesn't replace reality.
Well, and I think one thing important about this too is this was written just after the Industrial Age. So this could have also been a nod to the fact that, yes, the Industrial Age has happened, but there's still a purpose.
And it is how it is romanticized, the matriarchal culture versus the patriarchal culture, and how the matriarch culture is romanticized as in, because they're women, they're like loving and caring and compassionate and all encompassing. But there was no technology, right? So now we have the patriarchal era where we have all this technology, which I personally love. I mean, here we are, right? In 4 different places in the world, and yet we're together at the same time in space, but not in the same place. So it is that paradox of, we need technology, but we cannot, in my opinion, abuse the technology, because again, let me go back to the artificial intelligence and what is happening right now with the arts and the actors, right? And the strikes and all that. The people that create artificial intelligence, they're very bright. Their artistry comes via technology, right? They created these machines that you feed them some prompts and then they come up with something. That in and of itself is art, but it cannot be compared to the human emotion. And if we humans were not so capitalist and wanted to consume everything that we touch, maybe we could come to peace with artificial intelligence and not have the actors strike, right? It is a different kind of artistry. Like you say, Aaron, the golden bird is still beautiful and serves the purpose, but it cannot take the space of the real bird, which in terms of magic, and forgive me if I'm going ahead of the game, that is to me the biggest lesson in magic. You do you, boo. You be you. You be the kind of magician that you are. You sing your song. You do your magic. You do your art. You do your practice the way you do it. We have a lot of copycats. We have a lot of people out there being the Wicca police or the pagan police trying to tell people how to practice. And I'm like, what? Each one of us has a different song. And I practice like Laura. And Dave practice like Dave. And there is not going to be any other Dave on the planet. Because Dave has his own voice, song, and connection with the divine. And we might pray to the same goddess, but it's not the same prayer. Even if they were the same words, it's not the same song. So to me, that is that is the best part of the tale, where you can why try to imitate a bird when you have your own chant, you have your own song.
And hitting that same thing, having been a singer in my past life, I can sing a song that somebody else has written. It's going to be regurgitated words. Same thing with a spell. I can do somebody else's spell, but unless I use my own song, unless I use my own magic, that spell's going to just clang, clang, clang. It's not going to do the work. And that's one of the things that I did talk about at Mystic South, is the fact that we can use other people's magic. We can use their spells. We can use this and that and the other. But until it comes from here, until it comes from inside of us, until it's manifested from what we believe, what we practice, what we move in, it's just noise.
Yeah.
It may produce a result, but it may not be the most powerful. It may not be the most amazing. But if we sing that song from our own heart, if we say that spell, believing it, knowing it, trusting it, we're going to manifest something that we can't even imagine.
Listen, I'm just here at church. Let me tell you that in a good way. I'm just here like, let me tell you something. I'm enjoying this. This is bread right now. This is my bread and wine. But I agree, and I have so many things that I would love to latch on. For example, what Laura was mentioning at the very beginning. I think that the problem overall, I feel that the story in one way or another was reflecting against greed and that desire of controlling and manipulating and possessing, that it does not belong to you. And as you say, Laura, the artistry, the problem here, not necessarily latching onto the artificial intelligence, is not necessarily the problem. Is not the artificial intelligence. It's what these big corporations that want to just leech humans out of their money to control and this greed without measure. That's the situation, and that was the weakness of the emperor. And the only way for him to be able to be born again was dying, going through this process of understanding that even the material in the physical is going to pass at some point. Because something really interesting is that this mechanic, Nightingale, was played so often to the point that the machine inside was breaking, falling apart. Uh, it was the greed of we want to listen to song. It was the greed of we want to exploit you to the point of reaching um to exploit you to the point that you stop being. And that was what the Nightingale was not participating of. I am going to sing my song. It's a sense of independency, which I love also how we can connect with the feminist idea of I rule myself control my ownership, my own song, and also latching on the magic part. Uh, Definitely practicing your own magic. And I love how you both mention what you say about your own signature and your spells and your magic, something that I was struggling with at the very beginning. And I mentioned it starting it. I don't want to call my practice brujeria because I wasn't trained, and I don't feel that it's fair for my own culture to call what I do in the same name that theirs because I did not receive the training. I did not face the trials and tribulations that, let's say, in the way my people face through their practice. Uh, but in one way or another, I'm also grateful because I'm figuring out my own craft and I'm finding out my own path through study and failing and sleeping and falling and yes, in one way or another, I'm trying to be honest through my song to my own self, and I love how you both mentioned that because it also gives me that sense of I think that I'm taking the right steps, if that makes sense. Latching again onto the part of the magic, something that was very very important for me too was how we definitely can connect with the spirit of nature or maybe with nature to perform, but there's always going to be a line that we can never cross. We never are going to be over or completely controlling or manipulating an energy or a spirit to the point of making a slave of ours, which ironically is something that you can read a lot in the history of magic, like servitors and slavey and trapping demons and whatever is history, but I've never been a fan of, okay, let's take the freedom out of this being just to gain power. It doesn't make sense in my practice. It doesn't make sense with me, and it doesn't make sense with my own cultural background. And with this story, it doesn't make sense. Why would you prive take away this nightingale from their own nature when they say, hey, my song sounds better here where I'm at in the forest? My song is way better here, but okay, I will go. And ironically, this spirit of nature never denied the power and authority that the emperor had, but at the same time, this spirit was like, your castle is your own thing, my forest is my thing, and I need my freedom. So yeah, that on that.
There is something that you just remind me, Av, with the artificial nightingale, because what I Aaron, you are so generous, honey. Aaron sent me 3 different versions so I could like be well educated. And in one of the versions, the one that came with the video, they play the machine so often that now everybody learned the song, and so now everybody's singing the same tune. And now the emperor is like, it lost its novelty, it lost its charm, because now everybody is singing it and repeating it all the time. And that is something that happens with consumerism, right? That's what happened. We don't appreciate, we don't value anything that is mass produced. And the song of the artificial nightingale was mass produced. And even though it was artistry, it was depreciating the value of the real artist, which was the real bird. And it also ended up valuing itself because by the use and abuse, the machine broke. So there is a whole bunch of little metaphors there.
That's also something that happens with religion, including paganism as a religion. And a conversation I'm seeing more and more often is practitioners, especially witches, talking about how when they try to discuss some deeper themes of their practice, the majority of their pagan communities just kind of give them a blank stare because they're used to just doing the 8 big days, and I'm fine with that, which is fine. Honestly, I'm a little jealous of practitioners who can have a very satisfying practice very simply, as opposed to like me doing all this, But when you want to connect with someone who has a similar practice to yours, or is going through the same sources as you, and everybody's giving you blank stares, it could be frustrating. So I understand that. Let's continue, since we got there already. Let's continue on the subject of taking some magical instruction from specific aspects of the story. I'll start with a line that really jumps out to me is the tears of an emperor are very powerful. And of course, we don't necessarily all have access to an emperor, but I would say two things. One, again, this whole story could be referring to one single being, so that could be our own tears, but also the sincerity of the approach to the spirit is what convinced the spirit to work with the emperor.
I'm sorry, this is the Laura, I'm gonna look. The crying, right? So this is the emperor, right? The Grand Poobah, and he's the one crying. Moved by a tiny little, modest, insignificant being. How, when we allow ourselves, that's why it's the Four of Cups, I think. Or how, when we allow ourselves vulnerability, we grow stronger. I am, and you know this, a big advocate for crying. I'm a crier. I cry for everything. I did not cry from age 12 to age 25. Like, I promise you, I was sucking my tears. And that really damaged me emotionally. And now I'm recovering, and I have been working really, really hard on recovering. And that's why whenever I feel like I want to start crying, I'm like, I don't care. I don't care where I am, who's around me, what's happening. I don't care. I just cry. It's such healing thing to do. And I think it's metaphorically, telling us like it's okay to be vulnerable once in a while and to appreciate beauty. And if beauty moves you to tears, I mean, there's no more valued tears, in my opinion, than that. Those are brought to you by art. Because it's a very sincere cry, which is what the Nightingale says, you pay me with your tears already. So there's something about being vulnerable that is the lesson there, I think.
One thing that, one of the things that these two know about me that you don't is I was a pastor for 10 years. So one of the things I was taught in the ministry is you can't shut down one emotion without all of them following. So I think that this Nightingale, yes, the vulnerability, but I think that the emperor had learned to control everything. We talk about the control level. He had learned to control everything. And I'm the same as you, Laura. I forgot how to cry, let's put it that way, because I was sexually abused from the age of 4 to 15. And you learn to shut down everything. So when all of that was finally dealt with and worked with and working through it, when emotions start coming up, just let them happen. And I'm at that point now that if I cry, I cry. If I start now, you're going to get it. That's all. But the fact that this bird was able to instigate something in this emperor that nobody else had seemed to be able to touch. So it's the magic of nature being able to manifest something in this person that he had pushed down, avoided, controlled for years. But it all started with that kitchen girl.
And the breaking of the ego.
Mm-hmm.
Because it all started because his ego got teased.
Mm-hmm.
How come I'm reading about the most wonderful thing on my kingdom on a book when I should know? So the first thing that happened is breaking the MFing ego for the whole thing.
And the
to
reason
happen.
he doesn't know is because he's either not getting out into the world to experience for himself, or he's not turning within to do the deep work to find the anima within.
And if you think about when we build walls, we don't just build walls to keep people out.
Yeah.
We end up keeping ourselves locked in.
Not only the emperor was not aware of nature. The emperor to come, the next king as well. They passed next to cows. They passed next to other animals, and this is the nightingale. And I imagine the kitchen man like, sir, no, that's not what we're looking for. I think that I keep repeating this is the most important, the most impactful, but I do think that the story it was well elaborated. One of the most significant elements for me was the very fact that death was able to be, I'm not going to be subjugated, I'm going to say appeased, was able to, the Nightingale was able to appease death with their music. This can extrapolate on many ways. When it comes to talk about history, many cultures have music as a way to exercise, heal, as a way to express emotions. When someone dies, when someone is born, ironically, and now that Dave mentions that you were pastor, I had the opportunity to study theology as well, or some theology. I'm not a master nor anything like that, but I had the opportunity to do so. And immediately when I saw the Nightingale singing to death and reminding death of the different fields and the people crying, and it's a way to show, hey, there are other places where you can be. Let's pass on this one for now. And also at the same time, the Nightingale song brought to the emperor, the king, peace and tranquility, because it appeased the guilty of the guilt of the past, and also calmed down certain good memories and bad, practically reinvigorated the king and the emperor. There is a story in the Bible where David plays songs to one of the kings, the king before him, I don't remember, Saul. Saul. Yes. And it was because the Lord sent a spirit to torment him, whatever. But the thing is that spirit was appeased through music. Where am I going with all of this? I do find that this story is a good way to showcase how music can be used in your craft, in your practice, to bring in emotions, to fortify a spell. In my experience, I am not typically a person that try to do a lot of left-handed spells, but I've done them and I enjoy them. In my experience, a good hard rock metal music, a song that brings up a lot of rage and fury, is excellent to set the mood for a left hand type of a spell. So that was where I was at with this song. There's nothing better to, when a baby is crying, sing them a good lullaby, and when someone is sick, my mom, she always sang to me when I was sick, and it's hard for me not to think of those moments of healing or the healing process without thinking on one of my mom's songs. Can we do it in our practice? Absolutely. I think that we definitely can.
I don't usually like to use pre-recorded music in my ritual. However, I did cast a love spell with a CD on repeat going, if I could melt your heart. And it worked.
I tried, but I never learned. How it was hard as rock. But you'll be happy to know, Amy, we shared this common thread. I, unlike Aaron, that used it for love, I have been very, very mad at people that I love very, very much. I think that is a common thing that happens when you're healing, when you're actively, consciously healing. And I will be so mad that I want to curse, right? And I found out, and this was before I was deep into magic, that if I put some hard rock and I just sing the lyrics without directing the emotion to anybody, but just to let the emotion out of me, without directing it back to the person that got me upset, but rather just, singing it out. Inevitably, because I did this a number of times, within 24 hours, and it's not that I was singing for 24 hours, it's like I will sit and sing 2-3 hours at night, all this YouTube. You can Google hate songs, and there are some wonderful hate songs. And I will find the lyrics and I will sing them out, and then YouTube knew it to take me from hate songs to Spanish rock, to Molotov, to Soda Stereo, and Cerati, and then now I was calm, and my anger was gone. And I promise you, YouTube knew where to take me. And yeah, it's a wonderful tool not necessarily doing like a whole ritual and casting a circle and all that, because I'm more of a folk practitioner.
But you use the music to release those emotions more than direct them towards someone or something?
Absolutely. Because I will be mad.
I didn't know that. I didn't do that. I am going to start.
Each their own, and remember the 4 most magical words, you do you, boo, that I learned from my birthday, by the way.
No, I'm going to copy you because I think that's going to be better for self-healing, for sure.
I was taught that to send it back is just like an eternal boomerang. That's what I learned. So instead of send it back, I send it out into the universe. And my dear friend Christine Ortiz used to say, if you give the goddess manure, she'll give you pretty little flowers. So you just send it back into the earth, and it will come, it will transform. And I have used music for that. And I have also used music for mourning. When I mourn the death of my stepson, the death of my mom, and then the death of an artist that I love, I use music to prompt me to cry. And I will cry and cry. And Aaron was with me many, many times before he moved to Texas. I will never recover from that. But yeah, it was, on purpose to mourn, to prompt myself to cry. And one of those, like the snot is falling out. Yeah.
In my training in the mystery school training of the Fellowship of the Phoenix, we were required to dismantle curses, and usually that meant an elemental dissection. But we were also taught one of the quickest ways was laughter, and I've often taken that to also mean joy. And I see the music here being an aspect of joy, reinvigorating the emperor.
And see, along that same line with me, I use song and dance. It's like when I'm when I'm at my angriest, the best thing for me to do is move. To throw my body around, to just express myself as hard as I can express. If it's just hammering into the wind, to do that. And then by the end of it, I'm so tired that that's when I'm able to start singing healing over myself. Even to the point that I can sing healing and forgiveness over the people that I've been angry with. So it kind of takes me out of the equation for a little bit. And like you said, give the goddess manure, you come back with flowers. So I put everything I've got into that dance, into that song. And by the time I'm finished, you've got something soft and malleable and workable. And you're not so bound up anymore. And I think that's a big thing. I mean, the emperor, if you think about the end of it, he was bound up by death. Death was sitting on his chest. He was bound up by death. But as the Nightingale sang about the fields and reminded Death of his gardens, and Death began to long to be in his garden. I mean, the Nightingale even loosened the bounds of death.
And Death wasn't only on the emperor's chest, but he had claimed the crown, the sword, and the banner. It almost sounds like Death was going to conquer the kingdom.
Yeah. At that point, it seems like Death was already winning.
Well, and there were others with him, it sounds like, too, because I was reading earlier that when the Nightingale sang, he was
the emperor was in like a phase.
The phantoms grew pale is the line.
His
the
deeds
phantoms grew
in
pale.
life came back to haunt him, both good and bad. And like the Egyptian negative confessions, before you die, you have to clear your conscience. Or before ceremonial magic, there usually is a practice of confession, which in Christian influenced ceremonial magic that would take the form of Catholic confession, or now there's been people who work other ways into it, including the Egyptian negative confessions.
Well, and even in folk magic, my grandma used to say the Psalms before doing anything, just to kind of clear the air.
Yeah. And that's part in the Key of Solomon as well. In the ritual preparation, you recite psalms.
I only confess to my therapist, so that will take me to heaven. But I wanna move into something that just came to me. After Death is winning, and then the bird comes, and they have this conversation. Sorry if I'm jumping ahead, as always. But when the Nightingale tells the emperor, "And if you let me free, I will come and give you sweet nothing," right? But you gotta promise me you're never gonna tell anybody I'm the one giving you the chisme. And if you don't know what chisme is, as you're Mexican, if you don't have a Mexican, chisme right here is gossip, and you usually do it when you're washing your clothes. But anyway, the chisme. So the Nightingale tells the emperor, I'm going to bring you the information. Metaphorically, if I'm your intuition, if I'm your instinct, if I'm that part of you that is nature, if you let me free, I will bring you the information. Which is what usually happens with your intuition when you try not to control your psychic abilities. When you just let your psychic abilities be, you learn to work with them, but not to control them. The more you learn to cohabitate with that part of you that lives and goes elsewhere, the more information that you get. And that is what the Nightingale does at the end. And the emperor finally gets like, "Oh, good morning." Because now he has learned that that part of himself is awake,
And there's also the directive to keep silent.
Yes.
Yes.
Don't say it to anyone. On my end, I definitely did see, like, as I mentioned, the archetype of like a witch or wizard now with their familiar. With in my experience, again, in my experience, you don't go around saying, "Hey, this is my familiar. This is their name." You know what I mean? uh, it did sound it gave me the impression the first time that I read it that after this transformation, now the Nightingale was more connected with his emperor, more now than ever, and was not only going to give him healing, was also going to give him the way to rule and manage in a more I would like to say profitable way for himself. uh, However, we can also extrapolate it onto maybe a better relationship with the spirit of nature, which I think that that's also feasible. Something that was very recommended to me is always have a good relationship with the spirits of the land where you are living, and that also works as well. A good offer, a good relationship with that nice nightingale that was living in the closer forest. So why not? Uh, I think that for a very cool element that I also wanted to bring in, not only the chisme, which yes, uh, the Nightingale reemphasized the importance of their own freedom. I think that this is again something that I keep repeating it, but for me it's important. I have ownership over myself, and I don't necessarily see it anymore as you cannot keep me. It was more like a subtle way to teach the king or the emperor, there are things that you cannot own and control. And as magicians, wizards, witches, sorcerers, spiritual people, something that is very important in my head, and that you also touch upon that, Laura, we are not omnipotent. We have strengths and weaknesses. Maybe you are good at healing and maybe I'm good at divination, or vice versa, and that we are not deities. We cannot achieve everything. I know that I will go to you when I need a healing work or a divination. I know that I'm going to go to Aaron when I need some ceremonial elements. I know that I'm going to go to Dave when, hey, I need to connect with nature, with the spirits of this place. It's re-emphasizing not that everyone has a strength or a weakness, more like our difference is what makes us unique as well. And that mechanic Vert at the end of the day, even though was able to imitate somehow or emulate somewhat the beauty of the Nightingale, even it was elevated with diamonds and rubies and gold, it was not the Nightingale itself. So yeah,
but it did have its own value, and
it did.
that's
It did.
why diversity. That's why diversity is so important in society. Because if we were all good at communing with nature, we all be like Dave, and that will be the norm, and that was that. That was that. That will be the only way of witchcraft, right? And you just mentioned, right? Aaron does this, I do that, you do this, da da da. And when we come together, this group of people right here, we have over 50 years of witchcraft under our belt, right? Because diversity enriches the community. And that is something that the Nightingale, again, very ahead of its time, touches on that. Like, don't poop on the mechanical bird because it did its job, and maybe the Nightingale knows that it cannot sing 24/7 the same song, but the machine can, so.
And it gets back to that ego part that you were talking about, Laura. When we're able to put that ego to death, we can see the value and the magic of other people. One of the things that I have been taught over the years, and this has been drilled into me by a mentor that I had. I mean, bless her soul, she's gone on into the Summerlands, but this is going to live with me the day I go. Work in the magic of encouragement. encourage the magic in other people, there are things that you can do that I'll never be able to touch. AB, you say you're a newbie at 5 years. There are things you can do that I can't imagine. Aaron and I talk regularly, and I glean something new from him every time we talk. So a big part of that is letting that ego go and being able to embrace the beauty in the other. I mean, the Nightingale itself saw the beauty in the mechanical. It saw the power, the magic in there. Even though it was man-made, it was a creation. But that didn't diminish the magic.
I think the last point that I want to make touches on the value of the mechanical bird. And through this discussion, I think I was able to work out my ideas of the role of the artist in the story. To illustrate, Dave, when you bring in a Christmas tree, why do you bring a Christmas tree into your house?
I bring a Christmas tree into my house to represent the seasons, the nature. It's a part of bringing in the green.
Right. Right. And so,
go ahead.
like AB, how you mentioned that the Nightingale might be a spirit of nature, a spirit of the local land to the emperor, or that it could also represent a spirit familiar. And then a spirit familiar often will have a localized house that you keep in your possession. And so the golden bird now to me has become
like the house
with the idea of an art. Art is there to point us to spirit, but not to take the place of spirit. And then magically we work with these icons, whether it's the statue, whether it's the painting I have that I've dedicated to Oberon, but I know it's not Oberon.
Yes.
But it focuses my mind on the actual spirit of Oberon, the actual figure of Oberon. So the mechanical bird has its place.
Yes.
It should remind us of the ephemeral beauty of the Nightingale, but not replace it. Or if you're working with a familiar, it's that anchor that keeps the Nightingale coming back to you.
Absolutely. Oh, and by the way, I want to reemphasize that I definitely was not diminishing like the value of the Mechatron, like mechanic bird. It was more again latching on to what I mentioned previously, that it's all behind the intention of what that art is being used for. The emperor, prior his ego death, let's call it like that, he was latching on this copy of the bird and squeezing it of its beauty for his own pleasure. That at the end was just a copy of what the natural Nightingale was. But now that you mention how this mechanic bird stayed, because actually the Nightingale requested to be kept in secret. If someone at some point hears, "Oh, is there a bird inside the room of the emperor, of the king," he can simply just say, "Oh yeah, it was the mechanic bird. The machine. I just wanted genius."
Aaron, I love you.
I love you too. Were there any? Okay, so that was my last word. Were there any other points that you wanted to get to, AB, before we close out this evening?
Oh no, this was an incredible experience. I would love just to like extra things to throw in the air. Mention that like in a more secular way, it seems like Christian. Christian Andersen wrote this story after meeting a famous singer who actually ended up being called the Nightingale of Sweden. I don't remember well, and I don't remember writing that. Let me actually see. Yeah.
She's a character. Unfortunately, they gave her a very different kind of music, but she's a character in the movie.
Yes, the Greater Show. Yes.
Or
The Greatest Showman.
The Greatest
Yes,
Showman.
Jenny Lind.
Right.
Yes, she was an opera singer,
Yes, Jenny
and
Lind.
she actually won the nickname of the Swedish Nightingale thanks to this story. And my boy Hans was falling in love with everyone everywhere all the time, and it seems like he fell in love with this lady, and she said no, like I'm not necessarily in love with you. He had to let her go.
Yeah, he did have to let her go.
So yeah,
he was also known to have many same-sex affections.
Yes.
I like to think his obsession with Jenny Lind might be just because we love a diva.
No, certainly. Me, a pansexual person, I would love to think that maybe he was in love with the soul of. He was attracted to different souls, and he was admiring that artistic self of those many crushes that he had. Uh, but even though this is like the secular background of the story, look how much we were able to extrapolate and bring onto our practice. And I have to say thank you to all of you, because I felt that I felt that I was at church. I think that I was just grabbing so much information. It was incredible. So thank you so much all.
Thank you. I think of Hans Christian Andersen as a very mystical writer, and still I never would have picked this story. And like you said, look how much we were able to be inspired by it. So thank you so much for bringing this to the discussion. Before I say goodnight, do you have anything you want to ask, if we have any listeners, that they follow you on AV?
Can you elaborate? Like,
do you have any projects that you would like to ask people to follow you on, AB?
Oh, no, yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned, I am creating content right now, and pretty much the content that I create is showcasing book reviews. I am reading books and giving my honest starter opinion. My opinion is always going to be reflected on what I feel and what I understand of the book. So I might be wrong, it might be biased, but at the end of the day, it's like my honest review of it. And I invite everyone that wants to get to hear the different book reviews, and recommend as well to follow me in my social medias. You can find me as AB Witch Journal practically in Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And yes, I more than me teaching, because I don't see myself in that place yet. I find that place to I have that place to share information and to receive information as well. So anyone that have book recommendations, or just want to connect and grow together, it's invited to participate of that.
Well,
be that encourager. I mean, be the encourager of the magic in other people. And help build on that. Sing your song to them.
Thank you. Please remind us about the magic of encouragement in future discussions too. That's a new phrase to me that I really appreciate.
Okay.
And Reverend Laura Gonzalez.
The no ego diva. We talk a lot about ego today, and I want to say, if you have followed me on Insta for 2 minutes, I'm always posting about my ego is my friend. I am friends with my ego. Ego shadow today. Play with it, because it's like a demon, and if you don't play with it, it's gonna eat you. So play with your ego, as well as with your shadow. Let them out to play, because if you don't let them out to play, they will consume you. I love you, Aaron Marsh, more than you imagine. I love the last remark that you made, and I thank you so much for giving us this space, as well as Dave. Thank you so much for the wisdom. And AB, I'm going to tell you what my very first teacher on paganism in North America told me. Here, I'm passing this. Don't you ever diminish your power, because 5 years is un chingo. Okay? And, sorry I cursed on your show, honey. And follow me on Insta and all my socials. I do Lunatic Mondays podcast on CSMP, the Circle Center Network podcast. I am very proud to be the manager of the station. We have over 950 hours of shows on CSMP, the Circle Central Network podcast. I do shows in English and Spanish. I also do Coffee Break with Tarot by Laura on Facebook, and you can find me as Tarot by Laura Gonzalez. And on Insta, I'm Magia Cerati, MAGIACERATI. I was able to do it. Thank you. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for inviting me, and see you next time.
See you next time. This is Frater Aaron. Thank you. If you've made it this far, we should be returning to Grim Fairy Tales with our next episode, which I'm super eager to return to. And hey, if you have a story that is meaningful to your understanding and practice of the craft, why don't you suggest it? We'd love to be exposed to new tales. Until then, may all your travels be filled with wonder.
It was great.